The morning mist hung low over the Norfolk countryside as two figures emerged from the shadows of personal struggle, their footsteps echoing through the ancient corridors of Sandringham House. For months, the world had watched and wondered, whispered and worried about the future of the British royal family. Cancer diagnoses, treatment journeys, and the weight of a crown that seemed heavier than ever before had tested the very foundations of the monarchy. But, on this crisp January morning, as the bells of St. Mary Magdalene Church began their familiar call to worship, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Princess Catherine, the woman who had captured hearts worldwide with her grace under pressure, would stand shoulder to shoulder with King Charles III, the monarch who had fought his own battle against illness while carrying the burden of a nation's expectations. Their first joint public appearance of the year wasn't just another royal engagement, it was a powerful statement of survival, unity, and the unbreakable bonds that hold families together when everything seems to be falling apart. This is the untold story of two people who discovered that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together when the whole world is watching. The ancient walls of Sandringham House had witnessed countless moments of royal history, but few as poignant as the quiet conversations that had taken place within its rooms during the winter months. Princess Catherine moved through the familiar corridors with a grace that had been hard-earned through months of challenge and recovery. The woman who had once been photographed at every public engagement, her smile bright and her energy seemingly endless, had spent much of the previous year learning to navigate a different kind of strength. Catherine's journey back to public life had been carefully measured, each step planned with the precision that royal protocol demanded but also with the wisdom that comes from understanding one's own limits. The Princess of Wales had always been known for her dedication to her royal duties, but her recent experience had taught her something even more valuable, the importance of taking time to heal, both physically and emotionally. As she prepared for the morning service at St. Mary Magdalene Church, Catherine reflected on the conversations she had shared with King Charles over the past weeks. Their bond had deepened through shared experience, the kind of understanding that only comes when two people face similar challenges and emerge with a greater appreciation for life's precious moments. Charles had been more than just her father-in-law during this period, he had been a source of wisdom and comfort, someone who truly understood the weight of public expectation while dealing with private struggles. The king himself had spent these winter months at Sandringham in a state of quiet reflection. His own health journey had given him a new perspective on what it meant to serve his people, not just through grand ceremonies and state occasions, but through the simple act of showing up, of being present even when it would be easier to retreat from the public eye. Charles had always been a thoughtful man, but his recent experiences had added layers to his understanding of leadership and responsibility. The decision for Catherine and Charles to make their first joint public appearance of the year at Sandringham Church had not been made lightly. Both understood the symbolic weight of such a moment, the way it would be interpreted by the media and the public. But, more than that, they both felt ready to take this step together, to show the world that the royal family remained strong and united despite the challenges they had faced. The morning of their planned appearance dawned clear and cold, the kind of crisp January day that makes everything seem sharper and more defined. Catherine woke early, as had become her habit during her recovery, taking time to center herself before the day ahead. She had learned to treasure these quiet moments, the space they provided for reflection and preparation. The woman who had once rushed from engagement to engagement now moved with a different kind of purpose, more deliberate and mindful. As she chose her outfit for the church service, Catherine thought about the message she wanted to convey. Every choice a royal makes is scrutinized, from the color of their coat to the angle of their hat, and she understood this responsibility well. But today felt different. Today was about more than fashion or protocol, it was about showing up as herself, as someone who had been tested and had found her way back to the light. King Charles spent his morning much as he always did at Sandringham, walking through the grounds that had been his sanctuary since childhood. The estate had always held special meaning for him, a place where he could connect with the natural world and find peace away from the pressures of his role. But, during his recent health challenges, Sandringham had become something even more precious, a place of healing and renewal. The preparations for their church appearance were handled with the quiet efficiency that marks all royal events. Security teams had been in place since dawn, but there was an understanding that this particular occasion called for a lighter touch. The people of Sandringham and the surrounding areas had always shown deep respect and affection for the royal family, and both Catherine and Charles wanted their appearance to feel as natural and unforced as possible. The small team of staff who would accompany them understood the significance of the day. These were not just employees but trusted confidants who had supported both the king and the princess through their most challenging moments. They moved with the practiced ease of professionals who knew exactly what was needed, but there was also a sense of pride and emotion among them as they prepared for what many saw as an important milestone in both Catherine and Charles's recovery journeys. As the time for departure approached, Catherine and Charles met in the main hall of Sandringham House. The moment was private, away from cameras and observers, but it was charged with meaning nonetheless. They stood together, two people who had weathered storms and emerged stronger, ready to face the world side by side. The king offered his daughter-in-law his arm, a gesture that was both traditionally royal and deeply personal. Their walk to the waiting car was brief but symbolic. Each step represented a choice to move forward, to embrace their public roles despite having every reason to remain private. The staff who watched them go felt a sense of pride and relief. These were people they cared about deeply, not just as royals but as human beings who had faced real challenges with grace and dignity. The drive from Sandringham House to St. Mary Magdalene Church is short, barely a few minutes along familiar roads. But, for Catherine and Charles, it represented a significant journey back to public life. They traveled in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts but drawing strength from the other's presence. The Norfolk countryside rolled past their windows, unchanged by the personal dramas that had played out over the past months, offering a sense of continuity and peace. As their car approached the church, they could see the small crowd that had gathered. These were not tourists or photographers but local people who had come to worship as they did every Sunday. The sight of familiar faces in the congregation would provide comfort and normalcy to what could otherwise feel like an overwhelming return to public scrutiny. The Church of St. Mary Magdalene holds special significance for the royal family. It was here that they had gathered for Christmas services, here that they had marked both joyful and solemn occasions. For Catherine and Charles, returning to this sacred space felt like coming home in more ways than one. The ancient building seemed to offer its own blessing on their decision to step back into the light together. The months leading up to this moment had been unlike anything either Catherine or Charles had experienced in their royal lives. While both had faced public scrutiny and personal challenges before, the combination of health concerns and intense media speculation had created a perfect storm of pressure that tested their resilience in ways they never could have anticipated. For Catherine, the journey had begun with what seemed like routine medical concerns. As someone who had always been remarkably healthy and energetic, the initial diagnosis had come as a shock not just to her but to her entire family. Prince William had watched his wife, the woman who had stood by his side through every challenge of royal life, suddenly face a battle that no amount of protocol training could have prepared her for. The Princess of Wales had always been known for her hands-on approach to royal duties. She was the royal who got down on the floor to play with children at hospital visits, who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty at garden projects, who threw herself wholeheartedly into every cause she supported. The forced pause in her activities had been particularly difficult for someone whose identity was so closely tied to being active and engaged. During the long weeks of treatment, Catherine had found herself reflecting on the nature of service and duty in ways she never had before. The woman who had once worried about meeting every expectation, attending every event, and never letting anyone down had to learn a different kind of courage, the courage to step back, to heal, to put her own needs first for perhaps the first time since becoming a royal. The support she received from her family during this time had been overwhelming. Prince William had transformed from devoted husband to fierce protector, shielding his wife from unnecessary pressures while ensuring she had everything she needed for her recovery. Their children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, had shown remarkable maturity and understanding, adapting to changes in their routine with the resilience that children often display in difficult circumstances. King Charles had been dealing with his own health challenges during this same period, a coincidence that would have seemed almost impossible if it hadn't been painfully real. The new king, who had waited his entire life to ascend to the throne, suddenly found himself facing the possibility that his reign might be shorter than anyone had hoped. The irony was not lost on him. After decades of preparation, he was forced to step back just as he was beginning to step forward. For Charles, the experience had been particularly complex because of his deep sense of duty to the nation. He had spent over 70 years preparing for the role of king, and the idea of not being able to fulfill that role completely was almost unbearable. The man who had famously said he wanted to be a servant leader found himself in the position of needing to be served, cared for, and protected. The king's approach to his health challenges had been characteristically thoughtful and methodical. He had insisted on understanding every aspect of his treatment, asking detailed questions and seeking to maintain as much control as possible over his situation. This was not born from stubbornness but from a lifelong habit of taking responsibility seriously and wanting to be fully informed about anything that might affect his ability to serve his people. During their respective recovery periods, Catherine and Charles had spent considerable time together at various royal residences. These conversations had taken place away from the public eye, in the private spaces where they could speak freely about their fears, their hopes, and their determination to return to their royal duties when the time was right. These talks had revealed depths to both of their characters that perhaps hadn't been fully apparent before. Catherine had shown a philosophical side that impressed Charles with its wisdom and maturity. She spoke about how her experience had given her a new understanding of the people they served, particularly those dealing with serious health challenges. The princess realized that her own struggle, while difficult, had equipped her with empathy and insight that would make her a more effective advocate for others facing similar battles. Charles, in turn, had shared his reflections on legacy and the meaning of service. His illness had forced him to confront questions about what he wanted his reign to represent and how he could make the most impact in whatever time he had. The king had emerged from his health challenges with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the precious nature of every day he was given to serve his people. The media attention during this period had been intense and often uncomfortable for both of them. Every absence from public events was analyzed, every snippet of information was dissected, and speculation ran wild about the severity of their conditions and the implications for the monarchy. Both Catherine and Charles had to learn to cope with this scrutiny while focusing on their recovery, a balancing act that required tremendous mental strength. The decision about when to return to public duties had been made carefully, with input from medical professionals, royal advisors, and family members. Both Catherine and Charles were determined not to rush back before they were ready, understanding that a setback would be worse than taking extra time to ensure they were fully prepared for the demands of royal life. As the date for their joint appearance at Sandringham Church approached, both felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This would be their first time facing the public together since their health challenges, and they were acutely aware that their appearance would be seen as a statement about their recovery and their readiness to resume their royal duties. The preparation for this appearance had been different from their usual royal engagements. Instead of focusing primarily on logistics and protocol, much of the planning had centered on ensuring that both Catherine and Charles felt comfortable and supported. Their teams had worked to create an environment that would allow them to focus on the spiritual and personal significance of the occasion rather than being overwhelmed by external pressures. In the days leading up to their church appearance, both had spent time in private reflection and prayer. For Charles, who had always found great comfort in his faith, this spiritual preparation was particularly important. The king saw their return to public life as more than just a royal duty. It was an opportunity to give thanks for their recovery and to demonstrate that faith and resilience could triumph over adversity. Catherine, too, had found her faith deepened by her recent experiences. The princess had always been spiritual, but her health challenges had given her a more profound appreciation for the power of prayer and the support of a faith community. She looked forward to returning to St. Mary Magdalene Church not just as a royal duty but as a personal pilgrimage of gratitude. The night before their appearance, both Catherine and Charles had slept peacefully, perhaps for the first time in months feeling truly ready for what lay ahead. They had done the work, physical, emotional, and spiritual, necessary to return to their public roles, and now they were prepared to take that first important step together. The ancient stones of St. Mary Magdalene Church had witnessed nearly 9 centuries of worship, celebration, and solemn reflection. As Catherine and Charles approached the church entrance on that crisp January morning, they were adding their own chapter to this long history of faith and community. The small Norman church, with its flint walls and modest spire, seemed to embrace them with the same quiet dignity it had offered to countless worshippers over the generations. The congregation that morning was a carefully balanced mixture of local parishioners and invited guests, all of whom understood the significance of this particular service. These were not casual observers but people who had genuine connections to the royal family and deep respect for the challenges that Catherine and Charles had faced. The atmosphere inside the church was one of reverent anticipation, with an underlying current of joy and relief that both royals were well enough to resume their public duties. As they entered the church, Catherine and Charles were greeted by the familiar scent of old wood, brass polish, and the lingering fragrance of winter flowers that adorned the altar. The Princess of Wales wore an elegant navy coat that struck the perfect balance between formal respect for the occasion and approachable warmth. Her choice of color was deliberate. Navy conveyed strength and stability while avoiding the starkness of black or the celebration implied by brighter hues. King Charles appeared dignified and composed, his bearing reflecting both the gravitas of his royal position and the quiet confidence of someone who had faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. His presence filled the space in a way that spoke to his natural authority, but there was also a gentleness about him that hadn't always been apparent in his public appearances before his health journey. The service itself was conducted with the timeless beauty of Anglican tradition, but there was an added layer of meaning to every prayer and hymn. The rector, who had known both Catherine and Charles for years, had chosen his words carefully, speaking about resilience, gratitude, and the strength that comes from community support. His sermon touched on themes of healing and renewal without directly referencing their recent challenges, showing the kind of sensitivity that marks truly pastoral care. During the singing of hymns, both Catherine and Charles participated fully, their voices joining with the congregation in songs that had comforted and inspired believers for generations. The familiar words took on new significance in light of their recent experiences, transforming traditional verses about faith and perseverance into deeply personal affirmations of their journey back to public life. The moment of communion was particularly meaningful for both royals. As they knelt at the altar rail, they were not king and princess but simply two people grateful for their recovery and ready to continue their service to others. The simple act of receiving communion together symbolized their shared commitment to their faith and their roles, as well as their determination to move forward united in purpose. Throughout the service, the congregation maintained a respectful atmosphere that allowed Catherine and Charles to experience the spiritual aspects of the occasion without feeling overwhelmed by attention. These were people who understood that this was first and foremost a worship service, with the royal presence being a welcome addition rather than the primary focus. The children in the congregation seemed particularly delighted to see Catherine, who had always shown special warmth toward young people. Even from their pews, they could sense her genuine pleasure at being back among people, and their innocent joy at her presence provided some of the most touching moments of the service. After the formal worship concluded, Catherine and Charles spent time greeting members of the congregation in the traditional way that follows royal church appearances. These conversations were brief but meaningful, allowing them to reconnect with people they had known for years and to meet new members of the community who had joined the parish during their absence. One particularly moving encounter involved an elderly woman who had been praying for both of them throughout their health challenges. As Catherine took her hands, the woman's eyes filled with tears of relief and joy. Such moments reinforced for the princess why her return to public duties was important not just for the institution of the monarchy but for the individuals who found comfort and inspiration in the royal family's presence. King Charles engaged in a lengthy conversation with the church organist, who had played throughout his health journey and recovery. The king's appreciation for music had always been well known, but his recent experiences had given him an even deeper understanding of how art and beauty could provide solace during difficult times. His discussion with the organist revealed his thoughtful consideration of how cultural and spiritual traditions could support communities through challenging periods. The photography and media coverage of their appearance was handled with unusual care and sensitivity. The images captured that day would become iconic representations of resilience and renewal, but they were taken in a way that respected the sacred nature of the occasion. The photographers, many of whom had covered the royal family for years, seemed to understand that they were documenting something more significant than a typical royal engagement. As Catherine and Charles prepared to leave the church, they paused for a moment in the doorway, looking back at the congregation and the sacred space that had welcomed them so warmly. This brief pause seemed to acknowledge both their gratitude for the support they had received and their commitment to continuing their service to the community and the nation. The walk from the church to their waiting car provided another opportunity for spontaneous interactions with well-wishers who had gathered outside. These encounters had a different quality from typical royal meet and greets, with an emotional depth that reflected the shared understanding of what Catherine and Charles had overcome to be there that day. Children pressed forward with small bouquets of winter flowers, their faces bright with excitement at seeing the princess and the king. Catherine's natural ease with young people was immediately evident as she knelt to their level and engaged them in brief conversations about their flowers and their excitement about the royal visit. Charles demonstrated his own gift for connection as he spoke with local officials and longtime residents of the area. His conversations revealed his detailed knowledge of local issues and his genuine interest in the well-being of the communities around Sandringham. These interactions showed that even during his health challenges, he had remained engaged with the concerns of the people he served. The departure from St. Mary Magdalene Church was handled with the same grace and dignity that had marked their arrival. As their car pulled away, both Catherine and Charles waved to the gathered crowd, their faces showing a mixture of satisfaction and relief. They had successfully completed their return to public life, demonstrating that they were ready to resume their royal duties while honoring the significance of their recovery journey. The drive back to Sandringham House was filled with quiet conversation about the morning's events. Both felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude, knowing that they had taken an important step forward while maintaining the dignity and spiritual significance that such an occasion demanded. Their first joint public appearance of the year had been everything they had hoped it would be, a celebration of recovery, a demonstration of unity, and a recommitment to their service to others. The impact of Catherine and Charles's joint appearance at Sandringham Church extended far beyond the ancient walls of St. Mary Magdalene, creating ripples of hope and inspiration that reached across the United Kingdom and around the world. In an era where public figures often seem distant and untouchable, their visible return to public life after facing serious health challenges provided a powerful reminder that resilience and determination can triumph over adversity. The immediate response from the British public was overwhelmingly positive and deeply emotional. Social media platforms filled with messages of support, relief, and admiration for both royals. People shared their own stories of health challenges and recovery, drawing inspiration from Catherine and Charles's example. The royal appearance had touched something fundamental in the human experience, the universal struggle to overcome difficulty and the courage required to step back into the light after a period of darkness. Local residents of Norfolk felt a particular pride in having witnessed this significant moment. Many had known the royal family as neighbors for years, seeing them not just as distant figures but as real people who had faced real challenges. The fact that Catherine and Charles had chosen their local church for this important return to public life felt like a validation of the community's support and discretion during their difficult period. The congregation members who had shared the service with the royals found themselves deeply moved by the experience. Several spoke later about the authenticity and humility they had witnessed, describing how Catherine and Charles had participated fully in the worship service without any sense of royal detachment or formality. These observations reinforced the public perception that both had been genuinely changed by their experiences and had emerged with a deeper appreciation for life's precious moments. Medical professionals and cancer support organizations noted the positive impact that high-profile recovery stories could have on other patients and their families. Catherine and Charles's visible return to their duties provided hope to countless individuals who were fighting their own health battles. The fact that both had maintained their dignity and grace throughout their challenges while being open about their struggles created a powerful model for others facing similar circumstances. The royal staff and courtiers who had supported Catherine and Charles throughout their health journeys felt a deep sense of pride and relief at the success of their church appearance. These dedicated individuals had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that both royals had everything they needed during their recovery period. Seeing them successfully return to public duties validated the careful planning and emotional support that had been provided throughout their challenges. Prince William's role throughout this entire period had been that of devoted husband and steadfast support, but he had largely remained in the background during Catherine's recovery. The success of her return to public duties alongside his father represented a triumph for the entire Wales family. William's own relief and pride were evident to those close to the family, though he continued to maintain his protective stance regarding his wife's well-being. The three Wales children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, had shown remarkable resilience throughout their mother's health challenges. Their return to normal routines and their visible happiness at having their mother back to full health provided another layer of meaning to Catherine's successful return to public life. The family's strength during this difficult period had demonstrated the importance of love and support in overcoming adversity. International media coverage of the church appearance was extensive and largely respectful, with many outlets focusing on the inspirational aspects of Catherine and Charles's recovery journey rather than sensationalizing their health challenges. The global response highlighted the continued fascination with the British royal family and the way their personal experiences could resonate with people from all walks of life and all corners of the world. Royal watchers and constitutional experts noted the symbolic importance of Catherine and Charles appearing together for their first public engagement of the year. This joint appearance sent a clear message about the stability and continuity of the monarchy, even in the face of significant personal challenges. The image of the king and the future queen standing together represented the strength of the institution and its ability to adapt and endure. The choice of St. Mary Magdalene Church for this significant appearance was also noted as particularly meaningful by those familiar with royal traditions. The church had been the site of many important family moments over the years, making it the perfect setting for Catherine and Charles to mark their return to public life. The intimate scale of the venue allowed for a more personal and spiritual experience than would have been possible at a larger, more formal occasion. Behind the scenes, the successful execution of this public appearance required months of careful planning and coordination. Security arrangements had to be balanced with the desire for a natural and unforced atmosphere. Medical considerations needed to be integrated into every aspect of the planning process. The result was an event that appeared effortless but was actually the product of meticulous attention to detail and genuine care for the well-being of all involved. The photographs and video footage from the church service became instant classics, capturing moments of genuine emotion and authentic human connection. These images would become part of the visual history of the monarchy, representing not just a royal appearance but a powerful story of resilience and recovery. The photographers who covered the event understood that they were documenting something historically significant and approached their work with appropriate respect and sensitivity. In the days following the church appearance, both Catherine and Charles continued to receive messages of support and congratulations from around the world. Fellow cancer survivors reached out to share their own stories and to express their appreciation for the hope that the royal recovery had provided. These personal connections reinforced the broader impact that public figures can have when they share their vulnerabilities and their triumphs with grace and dignity. The success of this first joint public appearance also set the stage for Catherine and Charles to gradually increase their royal duties and public engagements. Their medical teams, working closely with royal advisors, had developed careful plans for their return to full royal schedules that prioritized their continued health while allowing them to fulfill their important roles within the monarchy. The ripple effects of their appearance extended into the realm of charitable work and public service. Organizations focused on cancer research and patient support saw increased attention and donations in the wake of the royal appearance. Catherine and Charles's example had highlighted the importance of these causes and the ongoing need for research, support, and advocacy in the fight against cancer. Most importantly, the church appearance had demonstrated that life could indeed return to normal after significant health challenges. This message of hope and renewal resonated far beyond the immediate royal context, providing inspiration to anyone who had faced their own struggles and wondered whether they would ever feel whole and capable again. Catherine and Charles had shown that with proper care, strong support systems, and personal determination, it was possible to not just survive difficult circumstances but to emerge from them with renewed purpose and deeper wisdom. As the weeks passed after their successful return to public life at Sandringham Church, both Catherine and Charles found themselves settling into a new rhythm that balanced their royal duties with the hard-earned wisdom of their recovery experience. The woman and man who had walked through those church doors together had been forever changed by their health journeys, and this transformation was becoming evident in every aspect of their approach to their royal roles. Catherine's return to her charitable work carried a new depth and authenticity that was immediately apparent to everyone she encountered. Her visits to hospitals and medical facilities now held profound personal meaning, as she could speak from experience about the anxiety and uncertainty that patients and families faced. The Princess of Wales had always been compassionate, but her own journey through medical treatment had given her insights that no amount of briefing or preparation could have provided. During a visit to a children's cancer ward just weeks after her church appearance, Catherine's interactions with young patients and their families revealed the genuine connection she had developed with those facing health challenges. She no longer just offered sympathy, she offered understanding. When a mother broke down while describing her child's treatment journey, Catherine was able to provide comfort that came from her own experience of navigating the complex emotions that accompany serious medical diagnoses. The princess's work with early childhood development, which had long been one of her primary focuses, also took on new dimensions as a result of her experiences. She spoke more frequently about the importance of building resilience in children and the role that strong family support systems played in helping young people navigate difficult circumstances. Her own children's remarkable strength during her health challenges had provided powerful real-world examples of these principles in action. King Charles, meanwhile, found that his approach to his royal duties had been enriched by his own health experience. The king who had once worried about having enough time to make his mark as monarch now approached each day with a profound appreciation for the opportunity to serve his people. His conversations with citizens during royal engagements revealed a new warmth and accessibility that hadn't always been apparent in his earlier public appearances. The king's environmental advocacy, which had been a passion throughout his adult life, took on even greater urgency as he reflected on the legacy he wanted to leave for future generations. His health challenges had reinforced his belief that every day was precious and that urgent action was needed to address the environmental crisis facing the world. Charles began speaking more personally about his hopes for his grandchildren's future and the world they would inherit. His work with various charitable organizations also reflected his renewed sense of purpose. The king had always been a dedicated patron of numerous causes, but his recent experiences had given him fresh perspective on the importance of medical research, patient support services, and the need for better healthcare access for all citizens. His visits to medical facilities and research centers carried new weight as he spoke from personal experience about the gratitude patients feel for dedicated healthcare professionals. The relationship between Catherine and Charles had been profoundly strengthened by their shared experience of facing health challenges while maintaining their royal responsibilities. Their conversations during official events revealed a new level of mutual understanding and support. They often exchanged knowing glances during public appearances, silently acknowledging the journey they had shared and the strength they had drawn from each other. Their joint appearances became more frequent and more meaningful as the year progressed. Whether attending state occasions or smaller charitable events, Catherine and Charles presented a unified front that spoke to the stability and resilience of the monarchy. Their body language and interactions demonstrated genuine affection and respect, providing the public with visible evidence that their relationship had not just survived their challenges but had been deepened by them. The royal family as a whole had been strengthened by the way they had rallied around Catherine and Charles during their health crises. Prince William's devotion to his wife and his respectful support of his father had earned him widespread admiration. The Wales children's resilience and maturity had impressed even seasoned royal observers. Queen Camilla's steady presence and unwavering support had solidified her position as a respected and beloved member of the family. Behind the scenes, the royal household had also been transformed by the experience of supporting Catherine and Charles through their health journeys. Staff members had witnessed the human side of the royals they served, seeing their vulnerabilities as well as their strength. This had created deeper bonds of loyalty and affection that would serve the monarchy well in years to come. The medical professionals who had treated both Catherine and Charles found themselves inadvertently thrust into the public spotlight, though they maintained their professional discretion throughout. Their expertise and dedication had played crucial roles in the successful recoveries of both royals, and their work had been implicitly acknowledged by the successful return to public duties that both had achieved. The broader implications of Catherine and Charles's recovery story extended well beyond the immediate royal circle. Their example had provided hope and inspiration to countless individuals facing their own health challenges around the world. Cancer support organizations reported increased engagement and donations following the royal recoveries, demonstrating the positive impact that public figures could have when they shared their struggles with grace and dignity. Public polling showed increased support for both Catherine and Charles following their health journeys and successful return to royal duties. The British people had witnessed their royals face genuine adversity with courage and determination, and this had strengthened the emotional connection between the monarchy and the nation. The artificial barriers that sometimes existed between royals and their subjects had been temporarily lowered, creating opportunities for deeper understanding and appreciation. As the first anniversary of their joint church appearance approached, both Catherine and Charles reflected on how much their lives had changed and how much they had learned about themselves and their purposes. The challenges they had faced had tested every aspect of their characters, but they had emerged not just survived but transformed. They had discovered reserves of strength they didn't know they possessed and had gained profound appreciation for the preciousness of health, family, and the opportunity to serve others. Their story had become part of the larger narrative of the modern monarchy, demonstrating that even those born to privilege and position were not immune to life's challenges, but that with proper support, determination, and faith, it was possible to overcome adversity and find renewed purpose. Catherine and Charles had shown that true nobility lay not in avoiding difficulty but in facing it with grace and using the experience to become better servants of their people. The morning mist that had hung over Sandringham on that January day when they first returned to public life had lifted completely, revealing clear skies and bright sunshine. Like that weather, their own journey had moved from uncertainty to clarity, from shadow to light. As they looked toward the future, both Catherine and Charles carried with them the wisdom gained through struggle and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing they had faced their greatest challenges and emerged victorious, not just for themselves but as an inspiration to all those who would face similar battles in the years to come.